Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to our session today. This one is on the Transition Iowa program. And we've got Mari Reynolds here with us. And she's a graduate of Grandview University in Des Moines with a double major in psychology and human services and a minor in sociology. She's worked with Ask Resource Center since 2002, where she currently serves as a data coordinator and Transition Iowa project coordinator. Mari has a younger brother who is born with multiple disabilities, including cerebral palsy. She has become increasingly involved in his support coordination as a sibling of an adult with a disability. So transition is definitely a passion of hers. So she serves on Iowa State Rehabilitation Council and is a member of the Iowa Coalition for Integration and Employment and the Iowa Olmsted Task Force. And she's going to give us a good presentation on how to navigate Transition Iowa, and we'll have a question session at the end.
Thanks so much for being here, everybody. If you haven't already seen it, the Transition Iowa website is totally been revamped in the last year and a half or so. And we went through a whole big process to do that, and we really wanted to get as much input from family members and teachers and everybody that would give it to us, I guess. So it was kind of a long process of getting that input, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about all that here today. And I'm going to pass these around, if you don't mind, just with some of the information, a little bit more information from the transition site. So, as Shelley said, I'm Mari Reynolds. I've worked at Ask since 2002. I actually got started there because my mom worked at Ask, and I was filling in for the secretary. She was out on leave, and you know, special education is kind of a world of its own, and so I was in college and learned so much there that I just never left. It became a passion. And so, my younger brother lives in an apartment down in the East Village. He works at the grocery store downtown. And, we all live pretty close by so that we can help support him whenever he needs that, which is not infrequent, but, he does pretty well. And so I've been pretty involved with his voc rehab planning and things along those lines. When I was in college and my brother graduated from high school, that was, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but right before the reauthorization of 2004 of IDEA. So the law was updated in 2004 to include a greater emphasis on transition planning. And so that was before, my brother graduated before that time. So when he graduated, there wasn't really a great plan for transition. And really the plan was for him to sit on the couch at home, and that really wasn't okay with my mom. And so our family was lucky enough that she was able to quit her job so that she could help him find a job and figure out what his next steps were going to be. And so that is part of why this is something that's really important to me, because I know not every family can do that. And, now there is a law that makes this part of the process, thank goodness. There's so many options to try to help figure that out before we're sitting on the couch for a year. I've also worked a lot with Sandy Crashall, who is a retired family educator partner out of the Central Rivers AEA area. And so she had been with the FEP for a long time and was a really good partner to me in this work. So just a little bit about Transition Iowa. It's a website, and it's designed for transition planning for youth with disabilities, for parents, for educators, the people that are supporting that process. So we tried really hard to get input from all those different groups of folks to try to understand what you would want in a website. There was a website that was there before, and it just wasn't being utilized as much as it should have been. And we know that transition is a big area that families are concerned about, and so we knew that something needed to change here. It actually started with a bunch of trainings that were done in person, and those trainings are still available, but now they're on the website. So it's kind of been a process of going through the trainings, and at one point the Department of Ed wanted us to flatten the trainings and put them online, kind of a blog style, and that just wasn't working very well. So again, we recorded all those trainings. You can find those on the website, and then we've added a lot more to it. So this is a project that we've done in collaboration with the Iowa Department of Education. I've worked quite a bit with Kirsten Lane, who's the transition coordinator for the Iowa Department of Education, also with Voc Rehab folks. You know, I tried to, Mary Jackson is the Voc Rehab's new bureau chief around transition planning, and she was another partner to me in this process. And then, you know, getting input from any experts that I could along these lines. So we really tried our best to get as much input as we could. And so as we were revamping this site, we started with some surveys. And I mean, thank you to any of you that may have contributed to that, because I know there were a lot of folks that asked, fans out there that gave us your input. So we had more than 300 responses from that survey. Then we did some focus groups. And so we had teachers, parents, Voc Rehab, and case managers, and all kinds of different service providers. And we kept those groups separate because we didn't want, you know, parents to feel like the educators were influencing them, or the other way around, or anything like that, or maybe you can't express yourself as much as you'd like. And then the final piece was, we called it a resource review. So we just had people looking at the resources that were already there and deciding, do you think this is useful to you or somebody else? And then, you know, deciding whether to keep that resource or not. So it was definitely a big process. And out of that, we looked at, or I didn't want to do that. Out of that, we developed a bunch of different priority topic areas that came out of the surveys and focus groups. So these are the areas that people said they really wanted more information. And one thing that we heard consistently is, we want a roadmap for transition. And so we tried our best to do that. And the graphic that you'll see in the flyer that you've received is kind of the attempt at that. Now, so this is the graphic image because we wanted to have something pretty, because there's actually a like 12-page document that goes along with that. And so we know that that's kind of overwhelming, and so we had to try to make it a little more approachable with the graphic. And so we'll walk through that a little bit later too. So yeah, lots of important topic areas that really came out of this process. And so we've tried really hard to, in the creation of the site, to address every single one of these things in different places. When I show you the site, some of these are their own drop-down area in the resources section. We thought 14 would be too many, so we combined some of them together. And so now Transition Iowa is really a lot different than it was before. We've got more than 300 resources on that site, and before it was about 50 or so. So now my concern is making it not too overwhelming, because there's so much stuff. We do have the roadmap and the checklist, and there's a section for activities for skill development and assessments. So that's something that families could use, service providers could use, teachers could use, you know, trying to give you guys tools. That was something that was asked for. We've got the transition modules, which are those trainings that were kind of the start of this whole process. We have links to state and national resources. So I really tried my best to follow the federal guidelines around transition planning, both under IDEA and the WIOA law, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. We've included transition resource directories from the different AEAs across the state because we know that there's lots of good information in those documents as well. And then we tried so hard to make sure that we had pictures of Iowa youth and not just stock photos and things like that. So one of our star website folks is here today, not in the room right now, but her dad is. And so just thank you so much for everybody contributing in that process. It's been quite a journey, and it's been great because so far we've had really good feedback about the results of what people are seeing. So I hope that you guys feel that way too. So what's next? We're going to start to add events. We're going to have an event. We have an events tab, but it's blank right now. I'm sorry about that. That's my next piece of the project is populating events. So if you have or know of an event that is related to transition planning or adult services or something like that, that you'd like other people to be aware of as well, then we can post that on the site. We do have some content, some criteria guidelines. So pretty much we don't want to include events that are specifically for fundraising, but other things, absolutely. Yeah, do you have a question?
Have you heard of Credit Search?
Yeah, that's a really good.
That's a good program for transitioning from high school
Yeah.
into the workforce.
And I'm not sure if I have anything on that project specifically, because it's available in different pockets of the state, so it's not super consistent.
So that I do not know.
Yeah, it's not available everywhere, but I'm going to take a note of that and make sure that if there is something good.
Yeah, I'm going to get in trouble for something. It's basically for low to mid-functioning teenagers.
Yeah, youth, yeah.
Okay. And so this is the one in Baton Rouge is works at Trinity Hospital. And so they rotate their students in different departments.
Yep.
So they got the students working in labs. They'll do that for like 6 weeks. And then they rotate into housekeeping. They'll do that for 6 weeks.
It's a vocational program,
Then
yeah.
they will transition, or not transition, but then they will be working to another department.
Yep.
Right? And it gives them a really broad base. And along with that, they also do financial planning. And they do a lot of future, and they also focus on appropriate behaviors in the workplace.
Yeah.
So they cover, it's a broad scope of what they do for public service.
And a lot of times it's through Voc Rehab, isn't that program? Or was that through your school?
No, it's actually through the school.
Through the school, okay.
Through the school.
And
Now,
see, it's different in different
yeah,
areas,
yeah,
and
no.
that's the thing that's hard.
It does have their hand in it. I don't want to say that
Yeah,
they're not
right.
part of it.
Yep.
But they do have a hand.
Yep.
But when they graduate, they get a certificate of attendance.
Mhm.
And then when they graduate from Credit Search, they get their high school diploma. And then they also get another diploma for graduating Credit Search.
Yeah.
And it's a really
And I think part of the purpose is to try to help match with jobs and things like that.
Right.
So hopefully a lot of the graduates out of that program will
Right.
end up with a job quickly.
And they, several of Francine's class had a job upon graduation.
Yeah.
Or they were already working in their job.
And that's what, and it's great, but again, it's so hard because, yeah, only certain places have, and that's the thing that's hard about, especially in Iowa, I think, we just don't have everything available in every area. And so there's really great services in some places, but not always in all of them. So that's the hard part.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So the transition site, I'm going to just show it to you here. I hope we're connected. Yes, we are. So this is Transition Iowa. And if we just go down a little bit, just different pictures. And so these are kind of links to some of the important pieces. The resources section here is what I was talking about with the different categories. So there's, I don't know how many are here, 8, 10 or something. Living, learning, and working, and then there's a bunch of others. Now some of these you can, there's subcategories for. So under health and wellness, we have resources, just in general, or recreation kinds of things. And so you can really look at all kinds of different, some of these are not recreation. Let's see, and like transportation is one that's really hard. There's not a whole lot in this area, and I don't think I have a subcategory here, nope. So it's just transportation, but you know, as much as I could come up with around transportation in Iowa. So this is a big area that's kind of a difficulty, but you know, we've tried our best to populate as much as we can in here. I'm going to show you self-advocacy. Lots of good stuff in here. And some of these are more immersive where like, you know, a teacher could use this and there's a whole portfolio for a student and, you know, with assessments that go along with it and things like that. This T-Folio is a really good one. This Youthhood is a really good one like that. And some of them are more just like a document or a website, different assessments and things like that. So lots of really like financial. So we have financial planning, support, or skill development. So I'll just go to support. So these are like support programs kinds of things that help with financial planning or finances kinds of things. One of the things also that's on as many pages as I could get is this suggest or request a resource piece. So if there's a resource that you want to share, you think is missing from the site, or that you want to make sure that other people are aware of, you can give me a suggestion here. Or if there's something that you're really wanting to see and it's not there, please let me know. I'd like to try my best to find something to meet that need. So let us know about that. So that's the resources section. The activities and assessments. So here's a list of assessments here, a bunch of different categories. And then activities for skill development, different categories. Under transition planning, we have the Learn About Transition, which is where the those webinars, those learning modules are. We've got video vignettes, so just some real short videos about different things around transition planning. And then here is this around transition planning really goes into, you know, because the law does require transition planning for youth with IEPs, but we know that not everybody that needs that has an IEP. So we really start with, in general, you know, that for maybe even a student that doesn't have an IEP, but then goes into what is required under the special education law, and then what is required under voc rehab kinds of things, and links to those programs and you know, so that you can get access to those things. Who should be involved? And then here's to the roadmap. So the transition roadmap is here. It's a little bit buried, I have to say. But if you go to the transition planning tab, that's where that is. And so here's all the different roadmaps. We have a short version, which is the checklist, and then the actual roadmap document. So I'm just going to go to the full high school roadmap. When this is the longer one, we tried to chunk them up to make them a little bit more easy. And so this one is 7 pages and really goes into kind of who, what, where, when, and why around transition planning, and including kind of the law pieces, but just then also just this is the time to do this kind of thing. May not be part of the law, but just be something that is typical at that age. Or something that you might need to think about ahead of time because there's a waiting list or something like that. So we've tried to include as much of those things as we can. So just as an example, so every year in high school, the IEP team should assess for assistive technology and really think about the needs around skill development and things like that. So we've got a couple links. We've got related resources that go along with every single one of these lines of checklist items, I guess. And so it says, so beginning sophomore year and beyond, the IEP team should consider whether 4+ programming is appropriate for that student. And if this, and so, why? If the student has unmet needs, the IEP team should consider 4+ services. And so who's that for? Students with IEPs. And then here's the information on 4+ services. So, really trying to help guide that process and just kind of what might you want to expect in this IEP transition planning process. Yeah?
Have you heard of people building in transition services to a 504 plan? My daughter's in a 504 plan. I really don't know.
Yeah. What I usually hear is that when there's a student with an IEP, we try our best to try to lower the supports at the high school level to a 504 level of accommodations, because that is something that more easily can go with that student to that next environment. But there really isn't a requirement under 504 for transition planning or any specific things along those lines. So, the short answer would be no, I suppose. But I do think that, the team could brainstorm and help think of things along those lines, and that having a 504 kinds of things, and just that practice of advocacy at the high school level and things like that can really be helpful for those next steps, going to college and stuff like that. 504 plans, we say can go to college. Really what it is they have to follow 504 law. They would call it whatever they call the plan, support for accommodations plan or something like that at the college level. So it's a similar level of support, and that's the benefit of the 504 piece. But yeah, there's nothing really in the 504 law that requires transition planning that I'm aware of. Yeah.
Are you suggesting that kids with IEPs have a harder time in college or can't get into college?
But the IEP can't go with them to college. You don't have. So one of the big differences between the IEP and the 504 is that specially designed instruction piece, and that's not something that a student can get in college. Now there's 4+ services that some students get that is still part of high school and college, and so it's kind of in that both arena. But that specially designed instruction piece, if your child needs to be taught individually in a way, that's not something that a typical college program would provide. Yeah. And I know that, some, like the REACH program, that's a little bit different.
Right.
That's a little bit different.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, I forgot about the REACH program.
Yeah, that one's a little bit different, but you know, a typical college program, you know, the student has to do the same kinds of things as everybody else, and there's no specially designed instruction piece there.
No, but there are accommodations.
Yeah.
You know, like for example, note taking.
Yep.
You can have a recording device.
Yep.
You can get extra extended time for your tests. And those accommodations are usually based on an IEP.
Or a 504 plan.
Or, yeah. So I just was sure.
And it's really about having a history of accommodations is what the school likes to see. Some kind of evidence, or, you know, to be able to show that you've had a history of accommodations, especially when they've been successful accommodations. So yeah, it's,
Can I ask a question?
oh please, yeah.
Would it make sense to do like a 501, excuse me, a 504 plan like that during that senior year
Yeah.
maybe, or either during that 4+ period?
Absolutely. I've heard of that quite a bit, where that's kind of the goal, because it's nice for a student to be able to practice that advocacy at that high school where it might be a little bit more of a safe place and things like that. They're more comfortable, used to it, and get used to that self-advocacy piece, because in college they're going to need to have some of those skills.
So can we build that like in the IEP plan?
Yeah.
Say that we want to do like a 504 maybe during the last
You know,
year?
I've never seen it actually written out that way, but I think that that's a good conversation for the team to have, that, you know, that the goal would be to get to a 504 level of accommodations by the time the student is whatever.
And that can still happen in the plus period too. if necessary.
The thing is, though, is once the IEP is gone, that plus service is, you wouldn't get that plus service. The 4+ is an IEP service.
Okay,
So you'd have to be careful about that piece.
Right, so, but what if I guess I'm assuming what 4+ is. I'm assuming that it means that it's beyond
The 4.
additional 4 years.
Yep.
So if it was like in a 5th-year period, and we'd probably have to have a conversation with the team to determine if that would be something.
Yeah, I mean, I think because that's really an IEP thing.
know,
And
yeah.
so they might be willing to do a 5th year under a 504.
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
sure.
So it might not.
I'm not sure. But I think you could talk about how could we have just accommodations, maybe not that specially designed instruction piece, but just accommodations on the IEP.
That would look similar to a 504.
Yep.
Okay.
And I've heard of a lot of families doing those kinds of things.
Couldn't we modify the IEP to put in self-advocacy goals?
Yes.
You know, so that we don't have to necessarily.
Yeah, and yeah, self-advocacy skills can be written into the IEP, and so a student can have a goal around self-advocacy, and that we're going to practice that in the high school setting. Absolutely. Yeah, some schools do that a lot, and some schools it's little less heard of. But you know, absolutely, you can ask for that, and there's no reason they shouldn't be able to do that. Yeah. Just the goals. There could be an IEP goal itself for self-advocacy. You know, just like the reading goal or the math goal or anything else, there could be a self-advocacy skills goal.
Can I ask you another?
And that could be, I suppose,
They have that blank page, and it could be integrated into that.
in where?
The blank page that you have.
I mean, if it's a goal that's going to be monitored, then it should be an actual goal, you know. I think you could always work on those skills as an accommodation, or, you know, that could be written in lots of places of the IEP, really. And so I think what I would suggest is let's start with an assessment, you know, because we always like to have data around the need, right? And so we start with an assessment to determine where the student's skills are at, and if there is a need for for instruction around specially designed, around self-advocacy skills, because the goal of transition planning is to be prepared for life after high school, whatever those next steps are. And so if we know that somebody's going to need to be able to self-advocate, then are they ready for that? And if they don't have all those skills that they would need, then it would be appropriate to add a goal around whatever that is. And it could be specifically about educational self-advocacy. It could be about like health kinds of things. You know, there's lots of different things along those lines that could be done, yeah. And I think, but a good assessment, in my opinion, is a really good place to start with that. You can request assessments really at any time. A reevaluation is required every 3 years, but as a parent, you can request additional assessments really pretty much any time. I mean, up to once per year, but if conditions change or, you know, different things like that. So you shouldn't have too much trouble with that. So, yeah, Edwin. Yeah.
When I think about transition to adult, it's all about how you move from your own self to actually build into other advocates so that you can either have a goal for yourself as someone who has a disability, or have a support team to give you the support you need. It's useless at all you should transition to adult. And that's of your high school too. So it's a bit, it's like, to me, as someone who is working with adults in the community, I think about what is the transition to adult.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it is. It's you know, the home and schools. I mean, there's so many different ways and places that you can advocate and learn those skills, and then bringing them all together. And there's so many places and opportunities. But then if you don't have those skills, you know, it's a barrier sometimes. And so yeah, everything we can do to help support youth to have those skills and be as independent as they can and self-advocate, absolutely. Yeah?
So I know you talked about an assessment.
Yeah.
So like, are there assessments that are out there that like the teachers have access to?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
I could
Yep.
even
So there's some that are right here on this site.
Okay.
But teachers should have access to, and sometimes it's not like a super complex thing. It might just be like a checklist. You know, does your child do this? Does your child do that? Can they do this? Or like, how much support do they need to do this or that kinds of things?
Because I guess for me, I'm trying to figure out like what that looks like in the school setting. You know, like, so if self-advocacy is a goal, then I'm just trying to figure out how that would look on an IEP, even after the assessment is done.
So, I mean, you could have a goal where the student's going to approach their teachers to ask for the accommodations that they need, or some things like, because that's kind of what maybe that next step could look like. And I think that's part of that process is, what is that next step? So what is it that they need to be ready for?
my child, there is a goal for self-advocacy, but there's no steps. It's just the goal, it's there, but I don't see the things that,
Well,
are actually.
I think a lot of times there's a curriculum that could be used. I mean, there's, and part of that might be like starting with, learning about your disability itself, and then learning about how to speak up for yourself. And, so there's kind of steps along that process, I think, and there should be curricula that would be available, especially for the school to use. And then the practice of it, the instructional piece, but then the practice, I think, is important. So I don't know, does anybody else have like examples? Yeah?
Yeah, I do. So, like that, you set up a goal for you, and she knows that she has to have a goal where she can set it up, and you have to follow up with you every couple of days to see how she's doing, and relate to that part, because it is the voice, it's not going to be your voice. So you're gonna teach you how to do that in real life, like how can I follow up with the teacher? How can I educate that this is what I need, this is my accommodation. So in terms of that, I think his voice is very important, and he needs to know that I don't mind from first start from home, then if I talk to the IB meeting, I be told where they can see what their work is done, and then they can build on that, and then you give him a chance to look at it back and look at that goal again, and make him decide, is it the goal that I set up for myself, or is it the goal that I want to do, to continue doing on? So that's what self-advocacy is going to help into. And there are many resources on that we use that I know that I'm working with the organization, so we work on developing that together. And I'm going to talk about
Edward has a presentation later on that I'm guessing they'll be talking about some of that kind of work, yeah. Yeah.
With the self-advocacy piece, when you're sitting at your IEP meeting, someone should be asking, what do you think? Right? Instead of him just sitting there, I'm assuming it's him, right? Instead of him sitting there and all the adults are making decisions, right? And if he doesn't agree with something, that whatever the decision is, instead of just sitting there and just letting it go, he should be saying, no, I don't agree with this, right? And so it doesn't have to be a big giant thing. It can be just something simple. Or I forgot my homework, right? The dog ate the homework, whatever, right? But to ask for extra time, or asking for a grace period, or something, that would be self-advocacy. So it doesn't have to be a major, big giant thing. It could be very, very small things. Let's say, for example, he's being bullied at school and he doesn't say anything, right? He needs to say something, and by saying something, that's being self-advocacy. So you can, with the goal, that would be written in the IEP. There would be certain types of things. So you don't necessarily have a curriculum. And a curriculum is great. I think
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
No, you don't.
But for the self-advocacy piece, the team can come together and, you know, make the goal. And so let's say, for example, you know, the first step is asking for his homework, right? What am I supposed to do for homework tomorrow? Right? Just something simple.
Right.
Right? Once he masters that, then we can go to something, you know, a little bit bigger. You see what I'm saying?
And then, and this is helpful, so I see what you're saying, I just think that there's, at least for my situation, I think we need to have specifics and not just a generalization, which is just generally
Yeah.
saying, you know, self-advocacy. Well, what does that look like? And so this has been helpful.
And
to
so
me,
I
can take that back and just say, we need to have specifics, because there are things that I can think of just listening to you guys, just things, and things that we're currently doing
Yeah.
right now, but it's not really, you know,
It's
spelled
not
out,
related,
it's not
right.
specific.
Right.
To some of the things, because there are some areas where advocacy is well, it's just certain areas where it's a little bit more difficult for that self-advocacy piece
Yep.
to show up.
Yep.
And so it's just like really specifically pinpointing those and working on those, and just instead of having it just generalized.
So this is an assessment that I was able to find, and this one, I mean, I know you can't see it that well on the screen here. I'm not sure why. Gets pretty specific, and you know, and kind of different. You know, I make my own meals and snacks. I care for my clothes. I do chores in my home. You know, so there's lots of different areas here where they can assess where someone's at. So, you know, just as an example, this is just the one option. But one thing I'd like for you guys to do, if anybody has your phone on you and you'd like to check out the site, I would love for you guys to get on there, check it out. Let me know. I'd like to hear any feedback that you have. Explore it a little bit and tell me what you think. I was hoping to get any additional feedback I could grab out of you guys today. Did you have any?
Yeah, I was just going to comment. So Edwin and I worked with a number of people, designed a youth leadership program with the Iowa Developmental Disability Council. And part of that program, one section in there that helped people for transition, so these are all youth transitioning, was just helping them do a self-assessment. So sometimes I think when we think of self-advocacy, we might think of things as parents that are important to us. But then when the youth starts to become an adult, they have to really think about what's important to them. So for some of them, it could be being involved in their community. For some of them, it could be having more friends. For some of them, it could be getting a job. And then we kind of help them think about what's important to them. So I think the transition, or thinking about them being a self-advocate, and Edwin hit on that, is like when his parents advocated for him on what they felt was important. And they had his best interest at heart. But as Edwin became an adult, he started thinking about what's important to me. And just to brag on Edwin, he finished a marathon 2 weekends ago, a full marathon. But that's important to him, and so he made time for that and a commitment to do something like that. Whereas parents might say, that's crazy, don't run a marathon. But the example would be, I think one thing that helped me think about self-advocacy for people is, as they transition, is, okay, so what's important to me? And then once you identify those pieces, then speaking up and saying, I need help here, or I need more assistance here, or I need a bigger community around this, or I got it. I can do this on my own, so I'll get back to you if I need help.
How can people get that? How can people access what you're talking about?
So we have the youth leadership. I have at the table up there, I have some information about our youth leadership, the application, but you also can go to our site, the Iowa Developmental Disability Council, and you can find that training there as well. So it's this summer and the end of July. So Edwin speaks quite a bit during that training to those who need help.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
But be careful about just Googling transition roadmap, because usually our staff has to do that, and I'll tell you, it's like, you know, this is really.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh, gosh. Sorry about that. Oh, gosh. Okay. Gosh.
But I would like
absolutely.
I find it very helpful to have the parents take it and the youth take it.
I agree with that completely.
So that you can look at that to see your idea of competence, their idea of competence. You may see some common areas in the youth. You may be surprised.
Just a point of discussion at least. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I just want to point out, I'm a family navigator.
yeah.
And so I work with families that have children up to age 22 with disabilities, mostly autism. And for the ones that are older, like 15 and above, I always send them this website, and then I also send them the Developmental Disabilities Council guardianship and
Yes, yes.
guide. And then there's one other one.
And that is on our site as well. You know, the document around guardianship and conservatorship, it's a very helpful, and it talks about alternatives to guardianship as well, which is really helpful. Yeah.
As a parent, I read that thing like 3 times.
Even though it's 70 some pages? No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it is actually, but yeah.
What age would you recommend the child take the assessment?
I mean, beginning at age 14 is when we really ought to start formally doing those kinds of things, at least as far as the law would go. I mean, I think it's good for students to be involved with their IEPs. I mean, I hear about elementary kids sometimes, and I think that's awesome. I think as much as we can involve people in their own planning is awesome, you know, and I, especially when you get to middle and high school, you've got, you know, it's got to work for that youth. And, you know, adults can sit around and try to make all these plans, but if the youth doesn't have any input, it may not work for them. So, yeah.
Just on that note to follow, I think my son's been participating in his IEP since 6th grade. He doesn't usually say anything, but I think I always felt like it was important for him and any of our kids to know who his team is.
Yeah.
Like to see his team planning for him and talking about his skills and what we see that he can do.
That's a good point. Yeah, thank you. Any other feedback? Has anybody been on there now and you want to tell me something?
I'd like to know more, because you kind of went by kind of fast, that
Sure.
T-folio. It seemed
Yeah.
like it would be something that my child would be able to access and do on his own to kind of see where he's at. Or again, you were going by kind of quickly.
Yep.
Did I capture that right?
Yeah, this one is one of the really immersive ones, if I remember correctly. And so I believe you get an account, you sign in for an account. And so there's, look, all these units here that are really around transition, you know, and this is for the youth. So I think you have to make a portfolio, transition portfolio, and then you work through the different units. And so yes, I believe teachers use this sometimes to kind of guide that self-advocacy piece. You know, some states kind of have these things built into their Department of Ed or something like that.
Is this something, I'm hoping that there were other programs that are interactive that
Yep.
my kid can do on his own to kind of help him thinking about the transition?
So I think this one, well, no, that, and I will say one of the things I'm hoping to get to, like this one is supposed to be almost like a, an apartment, or, you know, it's really supposed to be pretty, I think you have to log in. Pretty immersive. I've been into the, they've got, it looks like a room and you click on different things and it prompts with different things. This one's a very cool site. But yeah, you have to log in for this. But it's free. So, and you know, it's Ideas That Work, which is an OSEP-funded Office of Special Education program. So, whenever you see that logo, that's definitely a top-notch thing. Plus, it's got the Center for Disabilities from Minnesota, it looks like. Other questions, feedback? Thank you guys for coming today. Thanks for being here. I'm happy to take any feedback, really at any point here on this site. If you come across something that you want to give feedback on, I'd love to hear it. My contact information. Oh, that's not it. Oh, sorry about that. Could you please fill out the evaluation?
And you can just leave those trees down on your table and I'll fill it up.
No, I think conversation is what this is about.
Yeah, that was a piece we talked about in the, going around the schools and doing presentations on the IEPs. And that was a piece that we kind of fell into, was that there's a little loophole there that they're missing. So we're working on that. So if you want your schools to have us come talk, please tell the administrator and come contact Ask.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
I think you're aging backwards. Seriously.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll be, feel free to contact me and yeah, and if I can even help.
Oh, really? Well, thank you so much.
Together or whatever.
I appreciate that. I need that right now. Yeah, not to turn to a bigger number, but I don't want to. Glad you guys are here. Thank you so much. Let us know. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into this thing. And I'm not,
Yes, yes.
Well, the 4+ document that I have is from the Department of Ed. I don't know. You know, I know that I need to do a better job with Department of the Blind.
Well, I'm not Department of the Blind, I'm Iowa Education, they have their own 4+. but
right.
I'm the one that serves school age, Iowa Education Services for Blind and Visually Impaired.
Yes, yes.
Used to be the Iowa Braille School.
Yes.
Now we had to increase the length of our name. We have a 4+ program, and IDB also offers a 4+ program. So I'm not sure if those are on there. I'm sorry, I had to
No.
look first, I should probably.
I don't know if I do have it.
Okay, ours is on our website, and it's IESBBI.
IESBVI. Yep.
.org.
.org.
Yeah.
Okay, I will be sure to add that for sure.
And you have that ONET, My Next Move on there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was pretty sure.
Oh,
'cause
yeah.
I love that
No,
one.
that's a really
And she
good
was
one.
talking about interactive, it's like the kids need to be.
That's right.
not
You know,
not
the thing is like I've had there's so many resources on here, I kind of forget what
I know.
that was one of the first ones I put on there, of course, so.
But I just love it.
Thank you so much.
Anyway,
Thank you.
We have quarterly vision discipline meetings where, because I'm a statewide consultant,
Yeah.
so I meet with each of the AEAs. And we're doing our last round, and each one of them, I'm giving them that roadmap website. I'm like, go there. If they don't go anywhere else, go there
Thank
and
you.
use that.
Thank you.
It's really great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I was wondering, is this for all levels? Because my son is high functioning, I know that's not really good to say, but I feel like he falls through the cracks.
Does he have an IEP? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of stuff that, I mean, the intention at least was to be for just about anybody. And that roadmap and stuff talks about both, you know, like if you're going to need long-term adult services or college kinds of things and all of those things. So, I mean, I hope that it does do that. We've got a whole section, in fact, on, so if you go to resources and then there's learning and then there's post-high school. So there's a whole bunch of stuff about college kinds of things and just getting ready for that kinds of stuff. So that would be the section I would maybe suggest if we're thinking college at all. Or, you know, just whatever additional learning kinds of things, I guess. Learning and then post-high school.
He's actually signing up to do carpentry.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah, very good.
But, you know, people, when they meet him, they don't see his employees, but he's pretty, disabled in some areas.
Yeah.
The
Sure. Yep. Yep. You know, I think people are starting to understand that stuff a little bit better sometimes, not always. And I think for him to know as much as he can and understand as much as he can about those things is helpful.
When he was much younger, he was on, first he was on the handicap waiver, and then he was on the ID waiver. And that makes to me.
So is he on not any waiver? There's the habilitation waiver, and that one's more though, it's really can be more like mental health. So I will say that's a hard area. That is a hard area. I don't know. I mean,
They said that his mental health was bad enough to qualify for that one. 'Cause I tried to.
but you know, Voc Rehab, hoping you're working with Voc Rehab a little bit. Maybe not. They could be very helpful, should be able to be quite helpful, I would like to think. In fact, there's a session later with a Voc Rehab person. They're gonna be talking more about high school stuff, but they would definitely be able to tell you about Voc Rehab. And so, if you were just on the transition planning, there's a bunch of links to, well, it's this Voc Rehab high school contact list is here, and it'll tell you who your contact is for your school district. But you could always just call your local office but I would definitely suggest that. They can sometimes even help with books, like the cost of books or the cost of tuition or, you know, some things like that even sometimes. It's usually based on the sliding scale and all that, but, you know. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad he's got something in mind, you know?
And those waivers, I mean, they were a godsend for us. There's no way we could have afforded all the therapy that we got.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I kind of feel bad feeling like, well, there's so many other people chores off, but then, you know.
Well, he needs what he needs.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And then, no way they want to do this, right? No way.
Then they started asking you,
Yeah, so I thought, okay, I'll start talking to people, I'll see what the interest is.
right,
And then if I get enough interest, which I have.
right, oh, I'm sure, yeah.
I know I talk to them, wonderful, right? And then the way that we go to measure, because you have to measure.
Oh, yeah, you have to have a pre and post on everything.
Right, and so, there are several,
Okay.
but I came out with at least for what? One of them, very tough. Dates and
Hi.
Hi, real quick, you were given actually your name by
Yeah.
our son's teacher, so.
Oh, cool.
I'm just want to touch base with you quickly,
Well,
but,
you can get Bruce's
uh-huh.
and
the things we're having a little bit of issue with right now, and she kind of pointed at you, is our son is in 6th grade, he's 12 years old, and we feel he's just, socially he's not ready to move to middle school. And so we're talking about moving him back, and we were getting extreme amounts of pushback, and basically told that it can't, it's not going to happen. But I think I found out legally they can't refuse it. By policy, they can't refuse it.
Is that right?
In their policy, it says that
Oh, in the school policy?
the school policy
Okay.
will say up to 8th grade. you
Okay.
can- it's
Okay, I didn't,
The district or the parent can.
okay.
But,
I recognize you guys. You've been here before, haven't
Oh,
you?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I recognize you guys.
What's her maiden name? Or not her maiden name?
Fisher, Martin?
Suzanne Marston? She mentioned that she's refers to you and stuff like that, but, I was trying to get.
Retention.
Oh, yeah, retention and.
Well, I mean, if the school policy says that you ought to be able to do it, then I guess I don't know why you shouldn't be able
Well,
to
we
do
just
that.
figured that out
I will say,
last week, so.
you know, the way I've typically understood it is that it's an administrative decision. Like the school administrators have the most authority to make that decision. Some schools are good about getting parent input and going with that. And I mean, if there's a policy,
Yeah.
then I think there should be a policy that's followed. And so what I guess what I would suggest then is putting that in writing
Yeah.
and asking for a response in writing. Technically, the conversation about retention or promotion is the way they call it, is not an IEP team decision necessarily because, you know what, I think they're still in the middle of the tables maybe. So we haven't totally collected those yet. I'm sorry, we're not quite ready. If you want to grab some of them off the middle of the table, you can. Thank you. So yeah, you can, lost my train of thought, sorry. Okay, grade retention and promotion and, you know, just that, I mean, it's usually the administrative decision, but it's not a gen ed issue, or it's not an IEP issue, it's a gen ed issue. And so that's the thing that's kind of the downside. Now, that doesn't mean the IEP team couldn't talk about it and stuff like that, but.
The only reason that the IEP team basically gave us was, well, it's for the transition after turns 18, after 12th grade.
And the SSA studies, the SSA studies show that just pushing them along is better, but everything I've read is, with everything.
There's been no social aspect.
I mean, I do think they do, like the best practice according to the Association of School Psychologists, and I can give you the document, would say,
I've looked up Wright's Law.
you know, to promote and keep them with their peers and all of that. But, I mean, this is COVID time. I mean, I agree, like, should be pretty individualized at this point. And, I mean, so yeah, I don't, that's, I guess, what my commentary would be on that. Like, I'd say put it in writing, put your request in writing.
But yeah, they always say that socially it's better, but he doesn't interact with his peer group.
But do they know him? And
They do know him, but,
They know his name, but they don't play
well,
with
but
it.
they